Chapter 821. The ice melts, but it freezes the fire too. I also excused myself. My excuse was a little different. It was more along the lines of, I'm worried about her going by herself. I'll check up on her. The children protested, and the old man gave me a weird look. I ignored everyone and excused myself. In the end, I didn't really need permission to do anything. Thankfully, nobody stopped me. Spotting Evelyn was also not hard. All I needed to do was use mana sense and I was able to find her location rather quickly. But when I had drawn near her, the words that I heard coming from her mouth made me pause. I was useful. I think I'm the only one who is capable of resolving this entire situation. This is the very first time for me. I'm usually always the one who gets in trouble. I've tried to keep pace with the two of you, but even that is difficult. It feels as if the two of you are growing further and further from me. I see the two of you constantly resolving situations yourself while I watch you do it. That's why it felt weird to see people thanking me for something. This is the first time that it's happened to me, and I can't disappoint them. Even if it hurts me. That was also the moment when Evelyn exposed her arm, and I saw it. Who? So I really wasn't imagining things. Evelyn, she was truly hiding something. But I hadn't expected this to be what she was hiding as I looked at her. A mix of emotions tangled inside me, leaving me unsure of what to feel. Judging from how she spoke, the cure wasn't as effective as she made it out to be. While she was indeed removing some of the frost from the old man and the others, it was also true that she was absorbing the frost. Rather than healing the curse, she was just redirecting it toward herself. But why would she do this? Why is she insisting on doing this? Even after I heard her words, I couldn't make sense of it. And as such, crunch, I decided to confront her about it. You need to stop. The wind rustled even more fiercely as I stood face to face with Evelyn, her shock starting to subside. If you continue healing them, it won't be long until you turn into a statue. The surroundings turned quiet following my words. Evelyn remained silent, letting the wind sweep her hair across her pale face. She just stared at me. Feeling her gaze, I frowned. It's best if you stop what you're doing. And then what? Evelyn finally spoke, her voice slightly hoarse. I tried to reply, but Evelyn cut me off before I could even formulate a word. Stop and let everyone die. Is that what you really want? You want me to stop and just let the two children, the old man, and everyone else just die? They won't die, but it's the same as dying. No, it's not. Is it not? Evelyn suddenly smirked, turning her attention towards Leon and the others. Can't eat, can't sleep, can't dream, can't do anything, you're practically dead. The reason the 5 of them are even surviving is because they aren't normal people, but are you seriously going to tell me that the same is going to happen with the children? Just so you're aware, Penelope and Ilian both look up to you a lot. You really okay with just letting them die? The wind blew even more fiercely. My skin prickled as a result. Why are you silent? Are you seriously going to let them die? I'll figure something out. Ha, Evelyn suddenly laughed. Of course. Right. Why didn't I think of this? You'll figure this out. Evelyn threw her hands in the air. Almost as if she was celebrating. You always figure things out in the end, right? I mean, you practically do everything yourself. You don't even need me or anyone else. Instead of helping me, you want to downright stop me. For what reason? Because you think there's a better way. Ha, Evelyn shook her head, the sarcastic smile lingering across her face. In the end, things will just turn out well for you because of your past. Because you are a god. Evelyn stopped, her lips trembling slightly as the cold started to get to her. In that moment, I saw it. The faint flicker of darkness within her gaze as she looked at me. But I couldn't pay much attention to such detail as Evelyn continued to speak. Since you can figure this out, then that's great. I know that things will always turn out great for you in the end. Wasn't it the same for the right? I'm sure it was an oh-so-great decision for you to do it by yourself. It was hard to ignore the sarcasm in her words. But I still listened. Or what about when you died? Or all the other times that you've disappeared? How many times did you die exactly? What about the time when you let that bastard take over? Evelyn shuddered all of a sudden. Right, there's that bastard too. By that bastard, she was talking about Julian. Now that I think about it, I'm finally starting to get why there were times that bastard changed. It was you, wasn't it? You somehow managed to go back in time to do the shit that you did. As if suddenly understanding something, Evelyn covered her mouth and laughed. It was more of a sarcastic laugh than a true laugh. Of course. Yeah, that makes so much sense. She smacked her head. I've been so naive. But eventually, her smile faded as she met my gaze. Without hesitation, she lifted her arm and revealed it to me. The ice that was creeping over most of her hand. It was thick, and I could see it move. As you can see, there's no point in trying to stop me. The ice has already taken root inside my body. And I'm sure you're going to say that if I stopped, I could slow it down so you, she paused, stressing that, you, before continuing, could figure things out and save the day. She shook her head. No, fuck that. Evelyn's face scrunched up. This is the first time in a long while that someone's relied on me. Made me feel like what I'm doing actually matters. Even if it kills me, even if it ends up being for nothing, I'll still do it, whether you like it or not. So be my guest. Brushing her hair behind her ear, Evelyn began to walk, the snow crunching softly beneath her feet. Quote. Stop me, you hypocrite. Crunch, crunch. Evelyn brushed past me, her clothes and hair fluttering in the cold wind. The fog thickened around us, and when I turned toward her, all I could see was her purple hair drifting in the wind. In that moment, I remembered the look on her face, that resolute expression, and whatever words I'd been about to say died on my tongue. Who am I to say anything? I thought back to everything that she'd said, and found myself unable to retort at all. Of course, certain circumstances were inevitable. I didn't die, because I wanted to. The circumstances made it so that I died. But at the end of the day, her words. There was certainly some truth to them. She wasn't wrong about some of what she said. It was true. I often relied only on myself. It wasn't that I didn't want to trust the others, but the circumstances had never allowed me to. In this circumstance, especially. What was I supposed to do when everyone was frozen? I couldn't just ask them to help me. No, that's not the case. And like Evelyn, I paused, closing my eyes as the cold wind swept across my skin, leaving a sharp, prickling chill in its wake. When I opened my eyes again, I felt a complicated emotion. A certain truth dawned on me. It's not that the circumstances don't allow me to ask them for help, but rather, I'm subconsciously looking down on them. I wanted to reject this notion with all my heart. Looking down on them, but sometimes, the truth hurts. The more I wanted to deny the notion, the more certain I became that it was correct. I looked down on them. Through everything that had happened, they'd rarely been of real help. I was always the one doing everything. Over time, I'd begun to form a subconscious belief that all I ever needed was myself, and everyone else was just there. Helpers at best, temporary aids along the way. It was this subconscious thought that pushed me to make decisions that, looking back, were most likely not the best. Like in the right. At first, the plan was for them to join me in the right. But over time, that changed. Somewhere along the way, I subconsciously decided they wouldn't be of much help, and so, I came up with a far more extreme plan on my own. I planned on replicating what had happened to Almighty with Pebble. I planned on pushing the dragon to a point where it would evolve. And it worked. I was right, but at the same time, what if it didn't work? What would have happened then? Exhaling, I started to feel bitter. I guess I can be the problem at times. I wasn't perfect. I was aware of this. I am paradoxical. I like to ask for help, but never want to receive it. I don't truly like myself, but I love the person that I've become. I guess I'm a hypocrite. I smiled, looking towards the fog around me. Crunch. And with that thought, I headed back to where the others were. But the moment I arrived, my expression froze. What's going on? What's happening? Reginald. Chaos erupted around me as voices overlapped in panic. Evelyn's face went pale, her eyes wide and trembling as she stared ahead, hands shaking uncontrollably. That, and then, I saw it. The statue in the middle of the room. Reginald. He had turned into a statue. Chapter 822, Evelyn's Plight 1. Reginald. Quote. What's going on? Hey. The screams reverberated loudly across the room. They were loud and panicked. They were hard to ignore, and as I walked into the room, I saw everyone looking towards the statue in the middle of the room. It was Reginald, the burly man from before. Evelyn stood not far from him, her face pale and eyes lost. The children wailed next to him. But, I frowned. What exactly happened during the time that I was gone? Everything had been going well since then. How did things suddenly shift? Calm down, everyone. Let me see for a moment. The only one who stayed calm was Wheeler. He stepped forward, placing his hand against the statue's surface. Silence fell over the room as everyone watched him, waiting in tense silence while he tried to gauge the situation. But, Wheeler's expression turned complicated as he pulled his hand back. That was all everyone needed to see in order to understand. No, damn it, our Reginald, is he. Tears welled up in the blind girl's eyes as she held onto Wheeler's sleeve. Bring him out of this room. There's nothing we can do. Exclamation mark quote. Exclamation mark quote. Wheeler's words sealed the situation, and the two children could no longer hold it together as they started crying. Chloe's face turned complicated, but she soon went to comfort the children. Don't worry, he's only turned into a statue. Once we figure out the situation, we will be able to help him. Her words offered little help, but everyone knew the truth. He was dead. I don't sense any mana inside of his body. My heart grew heavy. I may not have known Reginald for very long, but I'd grown somewhat used to him. He was quite dumb, but he was also very friendly. He was the type of person who said whatever was on his mind. Who is going to bring him out? We have to do it before he turns. I will, Chloe offered. I'll place him where the other statues are. And no, don't go. A small hand gripped onto her shirt before she could leave. It was from the little girl, her expression pale as she looked in Chloe's direction. Or more like, she was staring in the direction of where Chloe's voice sounded. What if something happens to you, too? Don't leave, don't worry, Chloe comforted, patting her small head. Nothing is going to happen to me. You know that I'm a lot stronger than Reginald. I'm also one of the only ones who can bring him there. Just wait a bit, okay? I promise you that I will come back. The little girl tried to protest again, Ilian standing next to her, furiously writing things with his hand against Chloe's thigh, but Chloe just smiled in return. Like I said, trust me. I will be back. In the end, the children's cries didn't stop Chloe from leaving. Clank. A heavy silence settled over the room as Chloe left, the statue in her grasp. It looked heavy, yet she carried it with ease, her steps steady and unbothered. As the silence settled across the room, I turned my attention towards Evelyn again. Her face was still pale, and her hands shook. I could hear her mumble from where I was, but I thought that I was. Without a word, I walked to the corner of the room and sat down. As I did, my eyes swept slowly across the space, taking everything in. The children hugged each other, crying quietly, while Wheeler sat in his seat in silence, his eyes closed as if he were lost in his own thoughts. The old man looked relatively calm, his eyes closed as he sat on the sofa. Taking in everything, I took a deep breath. Just what in the world happened? How could the situation suddenly turn out like this? It made no sense at all. From what I understood, Evelyn was doing a good job at calming the frost down. For it to suddenly flare up like this, there was only one explanation. The frost is starting to worsen. Or more like, the curse. The realization made my breath pause. Looking up, I suddenly realized why Wheeler was lost in his own thoughts. He had probably realized this as well. Shit, I cursed to myself. The curse worsening only meant one thing. Leon and the others. They have even less time. I looked at Evelyn and clenched my teeth. Would she even be able to improve her skills before it was too late? I'm back. Thankfully, Chloe came back 10 minutes later. The children jumped up in joy, rushing towards her as she smiled and hugged them. What did I say? I told you that I would come back. There's nothing to worry about when it comes to me. For just a moment, the mood within the room seemed to improve. But the smile soon faded from her face as she looked at Wheeler. The frost outside has gotten worse. It's getting even colder. I fear that the statues have also become stronger as a result. I'm not sure if we can keep things like this any longer. Wheeler remained quiet, his expression unreadable. But eventually, his lips parted. What about the fog? It's gotten even worse. Even if we try to escape this place, there's no use. Escape. Hearing their conversation, I lifted my brow. Were they thinking of escaping? No, I don't think that's the case. I thought back to the conversation that I'd heard from Wheeler before. I was certain that escaping was the last thing he wanted to do. But rather, he was probably thinking this for the children. Single quote dot dot dot. Still, I don't think it's even feasible. There was a certain time window when the fog wasn't thick and the statues didn't move, but even then, given the massive size of the city, it'd be impossible to escape. I had thought about doing that before, carrying Leon and the others and leaving the city, but I realized rather quickly it would just be too dangerous. Not just from the mana consumption, but also given how it would be of no use in helping me figure out a way to bring Leon and the others back. I see. Wheeler's voice remained relatively calm despite the situation. Scanning the surroundings, his gaze eventually settled on Evelyn. She had calmed down somewhat, and feeling Wheeler's gaze, she flinched for a moment. But soon, her expression calmed down once more. No, it turned resolute. I think I can do it. She couldn't. I could tell from her face that even she didn't believe it. Train me more. I can take it. Are you sure? Yes. Quote dot dot dot. Okay. Wheeler stood up from his seat, walking towards Evelyn. In that moment, every gaze was fixed on Evelyn as she steadied her breath and met Wheeler's eyes. The two stood like that until Wheeler nodded and headed towards the door. Let's go. We don't have time to waste. The two proceeded to leave a moment later. I didn't say anything and just stared at the door. Thinking back about the words Evelyn had told me, I didn't discourage her or say anything to stop her. Instead, I started thinking about something else. About how to help her. Swoosh. The wind gusted strongly. Standing opposite Wheeler, Evelyn took deep and heavy breaths as faint muffled rumbles echoed from deep within her body. This was her way to keep her body heated and prevent the frost from invading every inch of her body. As you're aware, the situation has changed a little. It looks like the curse has become even stronger than before, and unfortunately, Reginald was the first victim. Quote dot dot dot. Yes. Evelyn's heart grew heavy when she thought of Reginald. She wasn't very close to him, but having healed everyone within that room, she had developed certain ties with each of them. The fact that he had turned into a statue. It's my fault. If only I had improved better. It's not your fault. Wheeler spoke, seemingly reading her thoughts. But it wasn't really hard as the current Evelyn was wearing her thoughts on her face. This is a situation that has unfortunately occurred. You were doing just fine. Your rate of progress has been amazing, and everyone saw how you were able to slow down the frost within everyone's body. A smile broke onto the man's face. Don't blame yourself for what you can't control. Don't let those thoughts drag you down. Just keep your focus on what lies ahead. You're doing great, and everyone here is thankful for you. Quote dot 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 quote. Evelyn's lips quivered. This was the first time she had heard something like this, and her chest couldn't help but tremble. For the first time, she felt the weight of responsibility. She felt a deep trust. In all her life, this was the first time she had experienced something like this. Yes, I'm not wrong. Evelyn clenched her teeth, thinking back to the things that she had said to Julian. She had said the words in the heat of the moment, but at the same time, these were her true thoughts. She wasn't just there to leech off of him. Evelyn was her own person. She wanted to be useful. To be someone others could rely on. She didn't want to be just the one who argued with Kira and Aoife while doing nothing else. Are you ready? This training is going to be even more intense than before. Breaking out of her thoughts, Evelyn looked at Wheeler. Craw crack, craw crack. The lightning within her body crackled further, and her muscles tensed. A sharp pain surged through her chest, nearly making her retch as the frost she'd been suppressing thickened within her body. But Evelyn forced herself to ignore it, the pain, the growing weight in her arm, and simply nodded. I'm ready. Quote dot dot dot. All right. Wheeler nodded, and a magic circle formed in his grasp. Staring at it, Evelyn tried to imitate it as the pain in her chest grew. I'm not going to just stand there and do nothing. Even if it breaks my body, and I might turn into a statue myself, I'll try it until the very end. This was her plight, Evelyn's plight. Chapter 823, Evelyn's plight 2. Evelyn's training grew more intense. She only appeared in the middle of the night or when she needed to ease the frost spreading through the others in the room. Each time, her presence seemed weaker, her face growing paler with every passing day, and all I could do was watch in silence. I didn't stop her. I decided to respect her wishes while considering a way to help her. Hey, Julian, a small voice brought me out of my attention. Lying on the floor next to me, the little girl blinked her eyes. Can you tell me more about the world you come from? The one I come from? Yes, yes. The little girl nodded. Quote dot dot dot. I've never been outside. I am curious. How is it? Is it warm? Warm. Well, it depends. Penelope's large eyes blinked. Despite not being able to see, that didn't mean that she didn't need to blink. The temperature can change. But how? Well, it's mainly because the weather over there changes depending on the season. Season? What's that? It's like this. I started to explain to the little girl the entire concept of seasons and how they worked. She listened to everything with wonder, her little eyes lighting up at certain areas. That's incredible. Of course, Ilyan found it interesting as well. It was just that he communicated his excitement through his movements as he threw his hands up. So in the summer it can get really hot. Summer. I corrected before nodding. That's right. It can get really hot in the summer. Sometimes, it gets so hot that it's really uncomfortable. Just standing outside will cause us to sweat. What? Yes, yes. I knew I was wasting time talking to the children, but when I saw their expressions, I couldn't bring myself to stop. It was clear they had never set foot outside the city. Too young, and maybe too bound by circumstances they couldn't control. But the next question that she asked made me pause. Do you think I will be able to feel it? The summer. Quote. To her question, I wasn't able to answer. My throat went dry as I met the eyes of the young girl and boy, both of them gazing up at me with a quiet, fragile hope that I didn't know how to answer. But as if I were noticing my hesitation, the expressions on the two dimmed. Only for the little girl to smile again. Well, I hate the sweaty. Maybe I don't want to see it after all. Nod, nod. Ilyan nodded next to her, and my heart sank. Hey, hey, a greasy voice sounded from behind me. When I turned, I saw the old man approaching with a lazy smile on his face. He lifted a hand and pointed toward the children, shaking his head in quiet disapproval. Don't you two try to get ahead of me. If there's anyone that's going to see this somber, it's going to be me. It's summer, old man. Penelope corrected, folding her arms together. The old man looked at me, his expression seeming to say, I'm not wrong, right? I heard that, correct. Tell me I'm right. Yes, it's summer. The old man despaired, and the children giggled. I looked at the old man and smiled. I wasn't naive. I could tell he had done it on purpose, trying to lift the mood in his own subtle way. I secretly thanked him in my heart as he sat down next to me. Well, I'm actually really curious about this summer. Ah, right, whatever you young folks wanna call it. Hey, you know, I've been curious about this whole summer thing myself. Been living in this darn city my whole life, never seen it quite like this. Heard tell that down in Chiron, the weather's about the same. Maybe that's where you're from, Chiron, I thought for a moment. If I wasn't wrong, that was the city of fire. Single quote. They're probably facing something similar to what we're facing. Just that it's most likely related to fire than cold. I shuddered at the thought. Perhaps, we didn't have it so bad here. No, I don't come from there. I've never been to Chiron, but I presume that there's no such thing as winter there. Oh, right, the old man smacked his head. Silly ol' me, how could I forget about something like this? He chuckled before continuing with the conversation. Old Sal, he was like this. He talked a lot and was especially good at reading the mood. With just a few words from him, the children no longer looked sad, and I felt a lot better. Hey, you know, back in my day, we used to head out into the snow and toss snowballs at whoever walked by. Got ourselves into all sorts of trouble, but boy, it was a good time. I remember one winter, one of my buddies even lobbed one at one of those fellas from the church. Ha, needless to say, he caught it worse than the snowball did. Ha ha ha, really, so silly, even I couldn't help but smile upon hearing some of his stories. They were pretty fun, but you know, leaning his head against the wall, the old man stared at the lights above, his smile fading for a moment as his hand stretched upwards. For a moment, he sat in silence. But then, quote. I'm really curious about this summer thing. In fact, I'm also curious to see how the other cities are. Are they as pretty as here? Or are they worse? How does grass look? What about the food? Is it the same? The old man's eyes were a little hazy as he spoke. I could understand where he was coming from. Stuck in the same place, he probably wanted to see what the world outside the bubble he lived in looked like. But you know, I think it's also fine like this. The old man smiled once more, chuckling slightly. Quote. I've had a nice life. There are no real regrets. Only wishes. With a soft, huaaa, he helped himself up, touching his back. His face scrunched up as he did. My back. What was I thinkin', sittin' down here? Takes me longer to stand up than it does to fall asleep. Looking at him, I smiled once more. He's not even touching his own back. He's touching his hip. Shut it, old man. A voice cut through a moment later. We all know your back is just fine. Even if you were in pain, you'd probably not feel it. Hey now, watch it, young lass. That's any way to talk to your elders, huh? Stop it, please. I'm trying to focus. What focus? I know you're acting. You're just jealous that we can hear all of this and you can't. Sure, sure. Chloe dismissively waved her hand at the old man. Whatever helps you sleep. The young generation these days. They really don't know how to talk to their elders anymore. Grumbling to himself, the old man went over to sit by the sofa. As he sat down, he mumbled, "Summer, huh? What an interesting thing." He seemed lost in thought, likely still mulling over our earlier conversation. Then I felt a gentle tug at my sleeve and glanced down to see the young girl gazing up at me with wide, curious eyes. You haven't talked about spring and autumn. How are they? Spring and autumn, I thought for a moment, and was just about to answer, when. Heek! A sudden yelp broke through the quiet, startling all of us. I turned my head and saw the old man rising abruptly from the sofa, one hand clutching his chest as the color drained from his face. Cough, cough. He started coughing loudly, and the children immediately rushed towards him. Ol' Sal, quote. Even Chloe looked startled as she rushed towards him. Hey, but it was to no avail. Cough, cough. The old man continued to cough, each one louder than the last. The children immediately started to cry, and as if sensing this, the old man forcefully suppressed a cough as he sat back down on the sofa and forced out a few words. I'm fine. He patted the children's heads as he did. See, cough. Hey, stop speaking, you old crank. Chloe rushed to his side, pressing her hand against his chest as a soft glow spread from her palm. Mana flowed into his body, and for a brief moment, the tension in his features eased. But as the seconds passed, his complexion continued to fade, and it became clearer that her efforts were in vain. I tried to help myself, but it was no use. This wasn't my specialty. The only thing I could do was provide my mana to Chloe. Clank. Not a moment later, the door opened and two figures walked in. Veeler, quote. Sister. Neither of the two made a sound as they rushed towards the old man. Step aside. Evelyn's expression hardened with resolve. She moved beside the old man and pressed her hands against his chest. A low, muffled rumble emanated from within her as faint streaks of lightning began to crackle across her eyes, the air around her humming at her actions. Veeler didn't sit idly, either. He stood opposite Evelyn and did the same. With the two working together, the old man's complexion visibly improved. For a moment, everyone started to ease. I was the same. I thought that they'd resolve the situation. But, pfttt. Blood burst from the old man's mouth, splattering across the floor as his face drained of all color. Frost began to spread beneath his feet, thin tendrils of ice creeping upward, wrapping around his legs and inching higher toward his chest. Sal, shit, old man, quote. Exclamation mark quote. Everyone's expression changed. Everyone but one person. Evelyn stayed perfectly still, her eyes shut tight as she focused all her strength on keeping the old man from slipping further. Her hands trembled slightly, but she didn't waver, pouring every bit of her remaining energy into holding the sickness at bay. But even with her entire focus and Veeler's help, the frost didn't stop. It continued to creep up on the old man. Slowly, the frost began to creep higher, encasing his legs inch by inch as it climbed upward, spreading its cold grip across his body. Craw crack, craw crack. The low rumble of thunder continued to pulse from within Evelyn, vibrating faintly through the air. Her face grew even paler, and she bit down on her lip until a thin line of blood appeared. Despite that, she kept going, forcing every last drop of her mana into the old man in a desperate attempt to save him. She didn't say anything, but I could see what she was thinking. I didn't stop her. Instead, I started helping her. Using my emotive magic, I tried to calm her mind. I even injected my mana into her body. I did everything that I could have. Everything. But everything wasn't enough. Stop. The old man's words echoed in the air, causing everything to pause as he blankly stared at the ceiling. By now, half of his body had frozen. Stop wasting your energy on me. He smiled. Quote. It's too late for me. Chapter 824. Evelyn's Plight 3. No. Evelyn was the first to shake her head. With both hands on the old man, she persisted. Sweat continued to drip down from the side of her face growing paler. But it was useless. The frost continued to grow. No, no, no. Evelyn's expression grew darker by the second, her teeth clenched tight as a storm of emotions rippled through her. I tried my best to steady her, to calm the chaos inside her, but in the end, a blue orb of light engulfed her body. It's okay. The old man's voice whispered again, the frost taking over his chest. It's not. Until the end, Evelyn didn't stop. But everyone in the room could see that it was of no use. I can see that you're trying, but you shouldn't waste all of your energy on an old man like me. As he spoke, he closed his eyes and sealed his mana. The meaning behind his actions was obvious. He had given up. The children's sobs grew louder, and Chloe lowered her head. Wheeler kept his eyes on the old man, though he remained silent. A tense and gloomy mood took over the room. Everyone seemed to have given up. Everyone but one person. Stop speaking. Evelyn's voice steadied, and I noticed a shift in her demeanor. The blue orb surrounding her body began to shrink, and her mood seemed to ease along with it. I grew alarmed. What's going on? Stop speaking like you're about to die. Sit straight and accept my help. Her cold voice echoed in the air, her purple eyes flickering with a certain light. But despite her words, the old man just smiled. I'm sorry. What are you sorry for? Do you think that you're actually consuming my mana? I can always get that back. Shut up and accept my help. Quote. You may not think of yourself as someone important, but the children need you. Everyone in the room needs you. If you die, who will take care of the children? Do you think they're capable of handling them like you? Quote. Accept my help. Quote. Answer me. Evelyn's shout startled everyone in the room, her eyes turning gloomy as her hair started to flutter as though a wind had suddenly appeared within the room. Seeing the state she was in, I grew alarmed. That was also the moment that I opened my system screen and looked at a certain quest. Filled Diamond main quest activated. Prevent the calamities from awakening or dying. Aoife K. Megrail. Awakening. Progress 80%. Kira Milna. Awakening. Progress 75%. Evelyn J. Verlice. Awakening. Progress 69% to 72%. The number was growing at an alarming rate. +1, +1, +1. Evelyn's mood turned gloomier and gloomier, and I knew that I had to act quickly before things turned for the worse. Hey, calm down. My voice layered as I spoke, but it didn't seem to have an effect on her. +1, +1. The meter continued to climb up, and her expression twisted more and more. Shit. Looking around, I could see that the children had started to move away, their faces filled with fear as they looked at Evelyn. Chloe took several steps back, staring at Evelyn with a look of apprehension, while a frown appeared on Wheeler's face. Seeing how the situation was turning out, I decided not to hold back any longer. I pressed my hand onto her shoulder. Joy, joy, joy. I injected everything that I had. Immediately, a green orb appeared within her body. For just a moment, the glow appeared to have an effect as Evelyn's actions came to a stop. But it was only for a brief moment as her eyes frosted over and a dark hue began to appear around her body. Shit. +1, +1, +1, +1. The moment I saw the string of numbers, I knew that the situation was turning for the worse. I tried even harder, but it appeared to have an effect on her, and just as I started contemplating whether to fight her directly or not, the old man's lips parted. Summer. He was the only one who appeared oblivious to Evelyn's changes. Staring toward the light above, he turned his head in Evelyn's direction. Have you ever seen Summer? Quote. Evelyn didn't answer. Lifting her head to look at him, she coldly replied, "Stop changing the topic. Allow for my mana to enter your body again." But it was as if he couldn't hear her. He just hazily looked at her. Quote. To be honest with you, I thought that I was satisfied with my life. I've lived for long enough. I've experienced a lot of things. Even when I heard about Summer, I didn't think I would be interested. Nor did I think I'd be scared of death. This old man is happy with the life he's lived. Stop talking nonsense. But that's a lie. The old man looked away from her, turning his attention back toward the light above. His face trembled. I am not as satisfied. His eyes shook. This isn't how I wanted to die. I want to see Summer, and tears streaked down the side of his face. I am terribly scared of dying. Quote. Evelyn turned silent, before her expression shifted. +1, +1, +1, are you making fun of me? Her fists clenched tightly, so tightly that blood started to seep down from her clenched hands as her eyes turned dark. Quote. You did all of that bullshit in order to stop me from helping you, and yet, now that you're about to turn into a statue, you cry about how you're so scared of death and how you have regrets. Evelyn pulled her hands away from his back. Fine, have it your way. She stood up, her eyes flickering once more. You can rot for all I care. Evelyn walked out of the room a moment later. Nobody followed her, neither Wheeler, Chloe, nor I. I wanted to go to her, but I knew that in her current state, she'd only turn faster. I planned on following her after a few more seconds. Instead, I just focused on the statue in the middle of the room. My heart grew heavy. Old Sal turned into ice. The number of people within the room grew smaller. To make matters worse, this was just the start. Swoosh. The cold bit fiercely from every direction. A figure stood amidst the cold, staring at the numerous statues before her. Her gaze was particularly focused on the 5 that stood before her. Swoosh, swoosh. The wind grew even fiercer, and the fog grew denser. Despite this, the world was silent. Evelyn basked in the silence as her gaze remained fixed on the 5 statues. The darkness in her eyes deepened, and her hair whipped wildly around her, caught in the raging storm that took hold of the surroundings. But eventually, something changed. Crack crack. A cracking sound echoed. Even through the howl of the wind, Evelyn heard it clearly. Moments later, cracks began to spider across the countless ice statues surrounding her, their heads slowly creaking as they turned to face her. It was a sight that could make anyone's skin crawl, yet Evelyn looked utterly unfazed. Her gaze stayed locked on the 5 statues before her. Unlike the others, they remained fixed in place. As if they understood their place. Crack crack, crack crack. More and more statues began to move. Slowly, they started to surround Evelyn. She didn't say anything and let the statue surround her. With each passing moment, they drew nearer and nearer. Yet Evelyn didn't move. She stood motionless, her eyes closing after a moment, as if she had already accepted her fate. A statue appeared next to her, its hand raising in an attempt to attack her. But just as its attack could land, ka-cha, a bolt of lightning burst down from above, striking the statue clean. It struck the statue clean, leaving nothing behind. But that wasn't all. Ka-cha, ka-cha, bolts of lightning crashed down in every direction, obliterating the nearby statues. The fog lit up with a purplish glow as arcs of lightning rained from above, tearing apart any statue that dared to approach her. The sounds spread in every direction, and as this went on, the frost around Evelyn's hand grew more and more, reaching all the way to the top of her shoulder. Her face grew paler by the second, and the mana inside of her body started to drain. In spite of this, she continued. She continued until there was nothing left around her. Only the 5 statues. Quote. A calm settled across her surroundings a moment later. This calm persisted for several seconds until a certain voice whispered in the air. How do you feel? Do you feel better now that you've released all your pent-up resentment? The voice was a familiar one. One that Evelyn was all too used to. Single quote. It feels good, no? Letting wild on certain occasions. You should do it more. After all, someone as useless as you needs to have an outlet like this. At the rate that you're going, you'll fail more and more. What can someone like you even hope to achieve? You're just a failure. The voice whispered deep into Evelyn's mind, causing her cold face to show cracks. Finally. You've always been useless. The one time you try to do something, you still fail. Control. You have no talent. The old man and the young man's deaths are on you. The voice paused, drawing closer to Evelyn. You caused their death. If you hadn't been so useless, they'd still be here. Evelyn's body shook, her eyes starting to turn red. She wanted to shake her head, to deny what was being said. But she couldn't. She couldn't deny any of the things that were being said. It was true, all of it. If she had trained harder, she was sure she could have eased their symptoms even more. She could have slept less, eaten less, sacrificed the little rest she allowed herself. But she hadn't. That small bit of time could have made a difference, could have pushed her further. Evelyn bit her lips, her eyes growing dimmer. That's right. This is all on you. You're useless. That's how it's always been, and how it will always be. That's why it's okay to go crazy once in a while. There's nothing wrong with letting out your emotions. Quote. Say it with me. I'm useless. Quote. Quote. Say it. Quote. Quote. Say it. I am about to go back. A voice suddenly pierced the air, making Evelyn freeze. She turned her head to see Julian standing a short distance away, his expression as stoic as ever while he brushed his hair back. You're about to go back. Chapter 825. Rise of the Calamity 1. Evelyn J. Verlice. Corruption. Progress 84%. Swoosh. I had no choice but to move. The numerous strings of notifications made it impossible for me to ignore her as I excused myself and found my way towards where she was. It didn't take long for me to find her. But what greeted me was a sight that made my heart drop. Ka-cha, ka-cha. Streaks of lightning tore through the air, crashing in every direction and obliterating the statues that advanced toward her. The power surging from her body was enough to make me shudder. When her eyes met mine, the first thing I saw was the thin black veins crawling down her face. Single quote ... It's just like Aoife. There was no doubt about it. Seeing her like this, I could only silently sigh. Things keep turning worse and worse for me. Not only do I have to think of a way to get rid of the curse, but I also have to make sure Evelyn doesn't turn. Great. Super fucking great. I wanted to throw up. Still, I maintained my calm as I looked at her. Her face was pale, and the subtle quivering of her body indicated to me that she was cold. I nudged in the direction of the safe house. Stop standing in the cold over here. You're going back with me. Quote ... Quote. Evelyn didn't answer, keeping her gaze locked firmly on me as her eyes flickered for a moment. That was all it took for my heart to sink. And sure enough, a smirk soon played at her lips. Are we about to do this again? Her voice was soft, yet carried a hoarse edge that made me instinctively hold my breath. We're not. I eventually shook my head. Quote ... We're not going to do it again. You're free to do whatever you want. If you want to help them, I won't stop you any longer. In fact, I acknowledge that you're the only one who can cure them. That's why I'm telling you to go back. So that I can help you cure them. You're going to help me. Evelyn raised her brow, the smirk playing at her lips growing even more pronounced. With what skill? You may be strong, but when it comes to elemental control, you're practically a tier below everyone. You're going to try to suppress my emotions. Is that what you're going to do? That's more than enough. Ha, Evelyn chuckled, looking at me in disbelief. Quote ... Are you going to take credit for it? I'll be doing all the work, but in the end, you'll still get some credit for it. That's all you really want to do, right? What? I felt my head throb. Lost it. She had completely lost it. You're not going to let me do this alone, aren't you? You want to steal my thunder. In the end, I'll still be useless, while you're the one who helped the useless one, isn't it? That's your end goal, right? Quote ... Quote. My mouth opened, but no words came out. I was speechless. I didn't know how to reply. Evelyn was so lost in her own delusions that she didn't even realize how idiotic her words were. What credit? What nonsensical thing was that? The last thing I cared about was credit. I just wanted to get the hell out of this place. But as I stared at the black lines that spread across her face, I knew the reason why Evelyn wasn't being reasonable. It's feeding on her insecurities. Even if I say anything, it won't be of any help. In the end, I raised both hands and sighed. At the same time I did, I paused before looking back up at Evelyn. All right, you caught me. I changed the tune of my voice, adding a smirk to my lips. You've read me like a book. That's indeed what I wanted to do. For someone as usually lost as you, I'm surprised you managed to read my intentions. You've changed. I'm quite surprised by the changes. The smirk wiped from Evelyn's face, a cold look replacing it as she looked at me. I could feel the black veins around her face starting to spread further. At the same time, I could also see the confusion in her gaze as she noticed the sudden change in my demeanor. Still, I didn't let her doubts carry on further as I started poking at her expression, my smirk growing even more pronounced. What? You spoke as if you knew. Why do you suddenly give me that look? Don't tell me you actually didn't believe it yourself. Quote ... Quote. Evelyn didn't speak. Instead, she remained still. It was this silence that further proved to me that I was right, and I was just about to follow up when I suddenly stopped. Turning my head slightly, my gaze fixed on the figure that had appeared out of nowhere. He stood amid the snow, his blue hair fluttering in the cold wind as he quietly surveyed the scene. Shards of shattered ice littered the ground around him, remnants of the statues Evelyn had broken, and nearby, the dark veins creeping across Evelyn's skin that pulsed faintly. He looked at it all. I suddenly started to have a bad feeling. That was the moment that I knew that I had to do something. Tick, tick, that power. His gaze flickered, and I felt a heavy pressure radiate from him, filling the air as his eyes locked onto Evelyn. He laughed a moment later, his gaze sweeping the surroundings once more. I was naive. I was stupid. He clutched his face, another owl slipping from his lips. It was quiet, yet it echoed through the air, and with it, the temperature seemed to drop even further. Evelyn's gaze locked onto him, her head tilting slightly. She began to part her lips, ready to speak, but before a single word could leave her mouth, he cut her off. You were with them all along. I was naive for thinking you could help us. I finally understand why Reginald and Sal died. It's because of you. You did this to them. +1, +1, +1, +1. The numbers in my vision continued to rise. Evelyn's face changed as she heard Wheeler's words, her previous cold face cracking as she shook her head, mumbling things like, "No, that's not true." "What's not true? You did it. There's no other explanation." "No, but her words fell on deaf ears. The more she looked at him that way, the harder Wheeler laughed. His glare grew even more terrifying, and the ground itself trembled from the force of his presence. This was the first time I'd seen the usually calm Wheeler starting to lose it. You say that, and yet, look around you. His eyes drifted to the shards of ice scattered across the floor, and Evelyn's expression cracked even more. It was only then that the weight of it all seemed to hit her. She stared down at her trembling hands, her lips parting as a broken whisper escaped, "Wait, what have I done?" "That's +1, +1, +1. The veins across her face darkened, standing out starkly against her paling skin. Her eyes, once bright, began to cloud over, slowly turning pitch black. A suffocating pressure poured out from her body, thick enough to make the air feel heavy. Wheeler's expression hardened, his face turning utterly cold. The crushing pressure only confirmed his suspicions. Several magic circles flared to life around him as the wind surged, howling through the air, and the cold deepened until it bit at the skin. A terrifying attack shot in Evelyn's direction a moment later. Unable to react in time, Evelyn was directly struck by the attack. Bang! Quote. Exclamation mark quote. Her body skidded several steps back, her expression changing from shock to betrayal. What? Why are you doing this? Wheeler gave no reply as more magic circles ignited around him, each one larger and more menacing than the last. Evelyn's expression turned paler as she mumbled, "No, why? Her eyes flickered even more dangerously. +1, +1, +1. Notifications kept flashing before my eyes, the meter climbing until it hit 90. The air itself seemed to tighten around me as the black veins on Evelyn's face thickened, spreading like cracks across porcelain. A suffocating pressure burst from her body, oozing out as a dark, viscous aura that began to engulf the surroundings. I didn't. Her voice deepened with each word, gaining layers, her voice overlapping with itself, as though another presence was speaking through her. Quote. I'm just trying to help. I just want to be useful. I'm not useless. +1, +1, +1, +1. Evelyn let out a piercing scream, the sound splitting the air as the snow around her shattered. Every attack rushing toward her disintegrated in an instant. Yuck. Wheeler found himself getting knocked back several steps, his face paling as he stared at Evelyn in horror. The curse. You're the curse. He continued to shout at her, but Evelyn no longer paid any attention to him. With each passing second, the darkness enveloping her thickened, her hair fading to black. Her eyes, already dark, deepened into an even darker abyss as the pressure radiating from her grew more and more terrifying. I watched all of this happen from where I was. I wanted to act, but I couldn't act. In fact, I couldn't move at all as my body shuddered from the inside. Staring at her, I could feel my heart drumming loudly against my chest. But not out of fear of her, but from something else. Ba, thump, +1, +1, +1, +1. The notifications continued to appear. The more they appeared, the darker Evelyn's presence became. But within the darkness, I felt something starting to awaken. Something that made my entire body shut down and freeze in place. I swallowed, staring at the scene before me with wide eyes. Hyak. Evelyn held her head with both hands, screams tearing through her throat as the darkness completely engulfed her. And soon, +1, +1, the counter struck 100. Evelyn J. Verlice. Corruption. Progress 100%. That moment, the world was engulfed in black. Chapter 826, Rise of the Calamity 2. The darkness was different than any darkness I was used to. It was deep and suffocating. Within the darkness, it almost felt as though no living thing could exist. The city of ice that once dominated my vision was gone. Instead, the darkness was now all that was left. Wheeler, Evelyn, they were both gone. I felt a deep sense of dread as I looked around me. Something vast shifted within the darkness. It was slow, but it was massive, like the stirring of a continent-sized thing that had been sleeping just beneath the fabric of the world. The air itself rippled, and with every pulse, I felt my thoughts blur, as if my mind wasn't meant to perceive what stood before me. Bah, thump, bah, thump. All I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat as it reverberated loudly inside my mind. I could hardly focus, feeling something try to invade my mind. And then, crack, a sound, distant yet deafening, like the splitting of reality itself. Lines of faint crimson light webbed across the void, stretching endlessly, twisting through shapes that refused to stay still. They flickered, symbols, limbs, or maybe eyes, but every time I tried to focus, they changed. And then came the whisper. It wasn't sound, but something else. Something more ancient, words that dug directly into my thoughts, bypassing my ears entirely. It begins again. The voice didn't belong to any one being. It belonged to all things at once. Thud, every syllable sent cracks spidering through my consciousness, forcing my knees to buckle as blood rushed to my ears. The weight pressing down on me was unbearable. Kika gravity itself had chosen to single me out. Something, a silhouette flickered at the heart of the dark. At first, I thought it was Evelyn. Her outline wavered. She looked delicate, almost fragile, but that was until it shifted. Her head tilted in ways a neck shouldn't bend. Her hair drifted upward, swallowed by the void, each strand stretching and fracturing into shapes that weren't hair anymore. Limbs elongated, then retracted, twisting into unrecognizable forms that melted back into the black. Her voice called out to me. It was faint, but there. Help me. For a moment, I believed it was still her. But then those same words repeated, not from her, but around me. The exact tone, the same voice, multiplied and echoed from every direction. Help me, help me, help me, help me, help me. Hundreds of them, thousands. They whispered in each direction, consuming me as I looked around me, my heartbeat rising as I held onto my head, trying to make the sound stop. Help me, help me, help me. Every whisper was loud, just slightly out of sync. Stop, make it stop. I started to turn mad, feeling my brain starting to overload as I clutched it with both hands. But as if that wasn't enough, I soon saw it. A glimpse of the outer being. Through the black, it looked like something immense. But just one look was enough to make my mind go blank as it struggled to grasp what was ahead. It was not a body, but a concept given form. Its eyes burned like dying stars, and its shape bled geometry and shadow, endlessly folding in and out of itself. Its very presence consumed everything, meaning, reason, and color, until only the void of its existence remained. My vision blurred. The world around me began to peel, layers of light and sound tearing apart as the thing. The being leaned closer. Not physically, closer in a way that the soul could feel. You looked. The whisper struck me from every direction. It was soft, and yet, it felt more like a scream to me. A groan tore from my throat before I even realized it, and I clutched my head as the air around me shattered, splintering into 1,000 different colors that rippled and bled into one another. And then, crack, reality started to split once more. I felt the distortion in the air, and the pressure that took over the surroundings grew even more. My breathing grew heavier, and the sense of dread that I felt grew. It's coming, it's coming. The darkness trembled. It wasn't shaking because of impact or force, but because existence itself was ripping the darkness apart. The air screamed, a loud whistling sound tearing in the air as my bones trembled. Every instinct in my body told me to run, to hide, to not look, but there was nowhere to go. The world before my eyes appeared to fade. Crack, a thin line of red split across the horizontless void, glowing like a flesh wound cut into reality itself. From within it, something vast pressed outward, and the nothingness around it bled a thin red light. Despite seeing it, I couldn't actually see it. My mind refused to process it. The edges of its being brushed against the limits of my understanding. Each second that I looked at it sent a jolt through my skull. Streaks forced down my eyes. It wasn't tears. She opened the gate. The whisper came again, closer. Like breath on the back of my neck. My chest tightened. The red light pulsed in rhythm with my heart, every beat faster, louder. Bah, thump, bah, Thump, something reached out. Not a hand, not a limb, but the idea of one. Its shape flickered between endless shapes and forms, tearing itself apart and reforming every second. Wherever it touched, the void rippled like liquid glass. And within it, I saw faces. Thousands of them, familiar and not, mouths open in screams, their features bending and melting into one another. I saw Evelyn's among them, her eyes hollow, her lips mouthing the same words as before. Help, me, but most dreadful of all, I could see my own face within it. Not as Julian, but as Emmett. A terrifying headache pulsed inside my mind, nearly shattering the little sanity that I'd managed to retain. But this was far from enough. I suddenly understood everything, the despair the gods felt, and the reason why one needed to master a mode of magic. These beings, they were the very embodiment of despair itself. A lot of things suddenly became clear to me. The reason why I'd received such a quest, and what I needed to do. The calamities are gates, or more like, the means that the outer beings can use to enter this world. Once they reach a certain level, they'll be able to step into this world. While I am not sure why it has to be done this way, I now know that I need to find a way to stop Evelyn and the others from being corrupted by this power. Staring at the creature in front of me, my vision flickering with all sorts of images as blood continued to trickle down my face, I lowered my head and took a deep breath. All right, I closed my eyes. The surrounding darkness grew, and the voices whispering in my head grew. But amidst the chaos, one single sound filtered through my mind. Tick-tick. When I opened my eyes again, the world was different. The cold bit down against me as I focused my attention on the two figures that stood opposite me. That power. Wheeler's gaze flickered, and a heavy pressure radiated from him, filling the air as his eyes locked onto Evelyn. Having already witnessed all of this, I knew I had to act. I had no choice but to act. The curse is corrupting her. Thankfully, I knew exactly what I needed to say. At the same time I spoke, I also tried to calm Wheeler's emotions using a mode of magic. I just needed him to be calm and rational enough to understand what I was trying to say. But was this enough? Wheeler suddenly laughed. The curse is corrupting her. He turned his gaze back to Evelyn. Her hair whipped in the wind, and black veins spread across her body, pulsing faintly beneath her skin. With the way she looked and acted, it made sense for Wheeler to think the opposite. Yes, the curse is corrupting her. It's affected her, as you can see. I pointed at Evelyn. You, of all people, should be aware of how she is. You've spent quite a bit of time with her. You must understand that this isn't the real her. She's being corrupted, and what we need to do right now is figure out a way to calm her down. If the curse takes complete control of her, it'll be over for the two of us. No, not just the two of us. Every one of us. This wasn't a lie. Thinking back to what I'd just witnessed, I felt a deep sense of urgency. My heart was still beating loudly as I looked at Wheeler. Corruption. Curse. Who? Me. Having overheard everything, Evelyn's voice drifted in the air as she looked at me. Seeing her look at me, I suddenly started to shudder as a string of notifications crossed my vision. +1. +1. I knew that I didn't have much time left. Without waiting for Wheeler to reply, I directly rushed in Evelyn's direction. The goal at the moment was to knock her out before she became even more emotionally unstable. Help me out, I shouted Wheeler's name as I sprinted toward Evelyn. Without thinking, I summoned my book, its pages flaring to life before my eyes. In seconds, I was in front of her. Her expression twisted in shock. Clearly, she hadn't expected me to move, let alone strike so suddenly. But having seen what I did, I knew that I had to knock her out. Swoosh. Without holding back anything, I fused the red and green orb in my mind, forcing my body to squirm and pop as I focused all of my attention on my hand as images continued to flash inside of my mind, raw emotions spilling and concentrating within my chest as threads appeared in all directions, surrounding Evelyn from all sides. Gritting my teeth, the threads splintered, raining down on her from above as I forced my hand forward, trying to reach for her body. But just when I thought I could do it, bang, lightning crackled from above, blocking my attack as Evelyn turned around to look at me, her eyes wide in shock. You, +1, +1, +1, +1, seeing the string of notifications, my heart sank. Shit, this was really going to be tough. Chapter 827, Rise of the Calamity 3. With each rising notification, the pressure surrounding the space grew. It took no time for the meter to hit 90 again. My heart sank at the sight. But that was the least of my problems as Evelyn's gaze fixed on me. Her eyes flickered a darker hue as her hair started to flutter in the wind. The string of notifications stopped for a moment, but as her gaze fell on me, I knew that it would be too late for me to do anything, even if I used emotive magic. Why? I didn't answer, locked in place by the pressure that was coming out of her body. No, right, I should've known why. I was right. +1, +1, bah, thump, my heart leapt out of my chest. Shit, the past was repeating itself. I knew that I had to do something, but as I stared at Evelyn, I didn't know what to do. My emotive magic wasn't working, and it was becoming very obvious that she was starting to overpower me. My mind scrambled to think of a solution, but as the seconds dragged, more notifications flashed across my vision. +1, single quote ... Think, bang. To make matters worse, Wheeler had started to attack Evelyn as well. He started throwing the same words as before as Evelyn's face paled. But despite all of this, she retained her gaze over to me. You really did want to take credit from me. You wanted to make sure that I remain useless while you steal all the thunder. Right, you said it. Why did I find it hard to believe in your words? What's wrong with me? Her eyes started to darken further. The pressure emanating from her body grew, and in that moment, it almost felt as though I was standing right before Delilah. Answer me, Evelyn shouted at the top of her lungs, the surroundings quaking as a result. For a moment, my heart nearly stopped. Wheeler was no different as he stopped as well, feeling the pressure coming from Evelyn and realizing that something bad was happening. But despite this, he still tried to attack her. Swoosh, magic circles formed in the air, and the surrounding air chilled. I started to shiver, but Evelyn didn't seem to be at all bothered, swatting all of the attacks with her hand. It's useless, she coldly muttered, her voice layering with another voice. Turning her head in Wheeler's direction, her eyes narrowed as several dark tendrils shot out from beneath and attacked him. Wheeler's expression changed as the unexpected attack caught him. Bang, this is really bad. I bit my lips, my mind trying its best to remain steady. But even that was proving to be difficult. The pressure coming out of Evelyn's body was suffocating, and the more I was exposed to it, the more my mind grew numb. Whispers started to enter my mind, and not a moment later, something cold clasped onto my arm. Tell me, Evelyn's hoarse voice came a moment later, her gaze intensely focused on me. I tried to pry myself free, but it was of no use. Quote ... I am right, aren't I? The reason why I am this way is that you've prevented me from doing anything. You're the source of my problems. You're the reason why I am the way that I am. The darkness had completely taken over Evelyn's eyes, and the surroundings started to get dark. My heart tightened painfully in my chest. I opened my mouth to speak, but when I saw her expression, the distant look in her eyes, the faint tremble in her lips, I hesitated, the words dying before they could leave me. There's no point. Evelyn was already too far gone. Whatever word I said would go to a deaf ear. In the end, I couldn't do anything. All I could do was stand there, staring as the notifications kept flooding in, one after another, filling my vision until it was all I could see. The darkness around me grew, and it was then that I understood that it was too late for me to do anything. Why? Evelyn's voice entered my mind once more. Licking my lips, I tried to speak, but Evelyn was too lost. Why, 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 why. The darkness had started to consume her completely, and I knew that there was no way for me to do anything. Looking at her, she reminded me of something. Of a certain someone, Julian, right, activating the 5th level of emotiva magic, her entire body was black. She was just as black as he was. The darkness had completely taken hold of her, and my heart paused at the sight. This was no coincidence, was it? I didn't even think. I just acted. Moving my hand, I reached for my right arm and pressed onto the 3rd leaf. This time, I didn't have to wait long for the leaf to activate. The moment I pressed on it, the scenery around me changed. The cold that once bit at me faded completely, and in its stead, tall skyscrapers started to form in all directions. The sound of beeping echoed a moment later, and the air grew heavier. What? Where? It took a moment for me to grasp the situation as I looked around, and just as I blinked my eyes, I was startled by a loud honk. Beep. Beep. Hey, you fucking idiot. Get the fuck out of the road. Looking in the direction of the sound, I saw a guy with a bold spot on his head shouting at me from behind the wheel. Several cars appeared behind him, all honking. Beep. Move it. Hurry the fuck up. It took me a moment to snap out of my daze as I hurriedly crossed the street under the curses of the people around me. I am back in the past. Or to be more precise, I was back in my old world. I was certain of it. From the busy streets to the smoggy air, all of it was as I remembered as I looked around to see many people looking my way. I didn't even blame them, as I wasn't dressed for the present era. Without a second thought, I activated Eye of Existence and used Lament of Lies to change my clothes. It all happened in a flash, and the moment I was done, everyone went on their way, completely dismissing my very existence as I walked across the streets. Why have I been brought here when I pressed onto the third leaf? Is this somehow linked to Evelyn? I wasn't sure about my current situation, and when I looked around, everything felt both similar and yet different. In particular, when I looked at the skyscrapers and the billboards, I froze at the sight that greeted me. The 7 pillars of the world. 7 figures stood on the billboards. Needless to say, I knew exactly who they were as I looked at myself on the billboard. I stood at the center, stoic and serious, while the others were smiling. I even spotted Noel, and next to him was someone who looked even younger than him. Torin, I couldn't quite tell, however, I believed it to be him as I took in the sight before me. I can also see Panthea. She doesn't look much different from now besides her eyes, but I'm more curious about the others. There was a large man with red hair and a beard next to Panthea. That was most likely Veltris, while Clora looked to be a mature woman with black hair and shifting eyes. She had a faint smile on her face as she looked at everyone beneath the billboard. Lastly, there was Ivanth. He appeared to be a slender man with long black hair and narrow eyes. His complexion was slightly pale, yet there was a certain sharpness to his features that made him undeniably handsome. My eyes narrowed as I stared at him. He was the most mysterious god in my eyes. I didn't know much about Clora or Veltris, but I still managed to hear snippets about them. Ivanth, on the other hand, it was relatively silent. It made me curious. What god is he? Is it possible that he's the traitor? My memories were still not there, making it hard for me to know, but thankfully, I was quite familiar with this world. I knew it like the back of my hand, and thus, after the initial confusion, I headed towards the spot where I lived. The goal was simple, finding my past self and asking for some answers. I was certain that he'd know about my presence and was potentially waiting for me. But of course, how could things be easy? Sorry, no one lives there. I stood before my old apartment, the old neighbor I was familiar with, shaking her head. The old tenants moved out quite a while ago. They're still renting, but I haven't seen them in a while. It's mainly because they're quite famous, but... Her eyes narrowed, suspicion creeping into her mind. Are you not aware as to who they are? Or are you specifically looking for them? Because if you are, no, I just want to rent. That's all. The old lady didn't seem to buy my excuse, and all I could do was leave while shaking my head. Yes, I should have expected this. Given how famous I had become, it was normal that I moved. But, I looked around me, blinking slowly. Where the hell am I supposed to go? Chapter 828. The 3 Calamities 1. Yeah, I think I'm actually lost. It hadn't been long since I came back, and I was already lost. The streets were the same, but despite this, a lot of other things weren't exactly the same as I remembered. My memories of this time were rather hazy, and the more I looked around, the more unfamiliar it felt to me. I think I've gotten too used to the world that I'm currently living in. Taking a deep breath, I walked along the pedestrian road while looking up. The sun was dipping down into the horizon, casting an orange hue over the sky. Nestled in between 2 skyscrapers, alongside a road that ran right towards it, the scene looked breathtaking. Or at least, would have, if not for the massive crack that appeared suspended in the air. My brows twitched. Faint memories surfaced in my mind. That should be the first signs of the mirror dimension. It all started with a crack. That was all I remembered. Nobody knew what the crack signified, but its presence was enough to make the entire world grow weary. I wonder how long until the mirror dimension fully takes over this ook. A sharp pain cut through my mind all of a sudden. It wasn't anything serious, but as it happened, several memories surfaced once more, and I stopped in my tracks. Without even thinking twice, I turned around and headed in the opposite direction. I know, I picked up the pace. Single quote. I know where I need to go. Asterisk. The world after the crack was vastly different from what it had been in the past. Nations united, and new nations arose. The city was called New Hope. It was a sprawling metropolis that stood among the most important and influential in the world. This was where most guilds and powers resided. It was also where most world governments established themselves to manage the global crisis that had taken hold. The headquarters of the Seven Gods stood at the heart of the city. It was a towering spire, visible from every corner of the city. Its massive frame loomed over the skyline, the sharp tips peering through the orange-colored clouds that drifted lazily above. One would think that I'd go there in order to meet myself, but instead, I went to a completely different place. A place that I was all too familiar with. J.D. Electronics. Quote. I stopped before the building, lifting my head to stare at it as it towered over me. With over 30 floors, the building was colossal. Its dark metal frame and wide glass windows gave it a cold, corporate feel as my eyes settled on the sliding doors before me. Without a second thought, I entered the building, entering the familiar reception. Concealing my presence with lament of lies, I slipped past the security checkpoint and headed for the elevators. Stepping inside, I pressed the 11th button and watched the doors slide shut with a soft chime. The elevator was quick, and it took no time to arrive at the designated floor. Ding! The doors slid open a moment later. That was also the moment the chaos behind the doors was exposed to me. I can assure you that we will offer you the best services possible. Look, listen to me when I say this to you. You can try any other competitor in the market, but they won't be able to offer the same thing that we have. I can assure you of this with my life. How about this? If you purchase our latest X7 model, I'll cover the delivery cost. Right at your doorsteps. Quote. Rest assured, our products are the best on the market. It's verified by the SNNSL. Yes, we've got the certificate for it. Warranty. Don't worry about it. We've got you covered for 10 years. It was chaos. Pure chaos. Papers flew all over the place as people dressed in messy suits paced all over the place, looking through the papers in their hands. The sharp scent of ink and paper hung in the air, and as I glanced around, a faint smile tugged at my lips. This smell, this vibe, it was exactly as I remembered, as I soon fixed my gaze on a certain figure. He sat in his own cubicle, his phone next to his ear as he wore a pair of glasses to hide his features. But looking at him, I knew that it was me, and as if sensing my presence, he soon turned his head and our eyes locked. The world seemed to freeze for a moment. But just for a moment, as he closed his eyes and muttered, "I apologize for the inconvenience, but I won't be able to attend to you due to a sudden situation. I will now transfer you to one of my colleagues. Like I said, I apologize." He hung up a moment later, standing up from the seat and taking his coat with him. Emmett, you're leaving early. Emmett, what are you doing? What's up with you? Everyone questioned him, but he just smiled at them, replying, "Nothing much. I'm just taking a smoke break," before passing me and heading to the elevators. He didn't even acknowledge my presence as the elevator doors slid open and he entered. Knowing myself well, I didn't say anything and followed him into the elevator. Just as the elevator doors were about to close, a hand shot forward, stopping them with a sharp thud. A moment later, a woman with soft blonde hair, freckles, and not-so-pleasing features entered. Taking a smoke break, the woman looked at Emmett, but he didn't answer. As if used to such cold shoulder, she just smiled and leaned back against the end of the elevator. It was only when the elevator doors closed that the smile slowly faded from her face. She reached up to loosen her tie, then removed her glasses, revealing a completely different face beneath. Her features were flawless, her soft blonde hair falling down her back as she exposed a pair of golden eyes. One that seemed to resemble a pair of suns. The moment I caught sight of such eyes, my heart nearly leapt out of my chest. Fuck. Memories flooded my mind all of a sudden. I remember. Panthea. She was my fucking coworker. Honestly, I can't believe you still want to work despite the fact that we've got heavier responsibilities. You should look at Torin. He's younger than you, and yet, he already knows the weight of the situation. He's practically going around taking most of the responsibilities that should have belonged to you. Quote. Emmett remained quiet, his gaze fixed on the digital numbers that marked the floors on which the elevator was. Are you going to keep ignoring me? Panthea looked annoyed. You know that Torin looks up to you a lot, right? Wouldn't it be better if you mentor him better? He's still quite young, even younger than Noelle. He's immature in his own way, and if you don't guide him properly, he's going to turn on you. It doesn't matter, Emmett muttered, finally speaking. But his words weren't ones that Panthea desired. As she frowned, what do you mean, it doesn't matter? Of course it matters. You, of all people, should understand the power and potential that Torin holds. You and I both know how much we're limited in our strength. He's our greatest hope in defeating them. You think so? Emmett looked at her, and then, for just the briefest of moments, he turned his gaze towards me. It was only for a short moment, and soon his gaze moved away. Leaning back against the elevator, he continued the conversation. Even if I were to mentor Torin, it wouldn't change a thing. Why do you say that? Because the power will corrupt every one of us. Ha, Panthea covered her face, mumbling things like, the only reason I'm not beating you up is because I love you. Fucking, why did I end up liking a guy like this? Eventually, she shook her head. You always say this, but it has yet to happen. Maybe it's true, but that's more reason why we should mentor him. Help him keep his sanity and prevent the power from corroding his mind. Maybe. That was all Emmett could answer with after a short pause. This made Panthea's expression twist. For a moment, it almost looked like she wanted to strangle him, but before she could do so, the elevator stopped and the doors started to open. Without a moment of hesitation, she placed her glasses back on and fixed her tie. This conversation isn't over. The doors closed a moment later, carrying on until they stopped again. Ding! A flight of stairs greeted us as soon as the doors opened, leading up to a metal door at the top. We climbed the steps, and when Emmett pushed the door open, a rush of cold wind swept over us. Beyond it lay a large and empty area. Buildings towered around us as Emmett closed the door behind him and walked towards the end, reaching onto the marble railing and taking out a box of cigarettes while staring hazily in the direction of the cars beneath. It was also that moment that I cancelled Lament of Lies and appeared before him. He, or to be more precise, me, extended his hand to display a pack of cigarettes. Cigarettes? I shook my head. I don't smoke. Really? I thought for a moment before shaking my head, at times, but I'd rather not. Well, fine. Lighting up the cigarette with a regular lighter, Emmett took a drag of the cigarette, allowing the smoke to filter through the air. Puff. He stood motionless, quietly savoring the cigarette before muttering, "You finally encountered one of them." My expression froze for a second. For a moment, I was almost about to ask, "How did you know?" But I soon remembered who I was talking to, and smiled bitterly. Yes. I see. Puff. Emmett took another drag of the cigarette, his eyes turning even hazier. Eventually, he muttered a single word or name. Auckern. The moment he did, the world appeared to come to a steady halt, the cars beneath and the clouds in the sky froze completely. Not a moment later, crack. The crack in the sky expanded, and a terrifying energy filtered through the surroundings. One that I felt was vaguely familiar. Puff. Without seemingly any care, Emmett took another drag of the cigarette in his hand before muttering. The Third Calamity, Chapter 829, The Three Calamities 2. Despite the changes that were happening around and the sudden expansion of the crack, Emmett remained completely unperturbed. Puff. In the silence that took over the surroundings, he took a drag of the cigarette in his hand. His movements were neither slow nor hurried, his eyes closing for a brief moment as he savored the taste of the cigarette. Eventually, he opened his eyes again, his mouth opening as he began to speak. There exists a total of 9 of them. The plume of smoke drifted in the air. Nobody knows their true number, but I know. I'm sure it's 9 of them. If I'm not wrong, there should be 8 in the future. 8. I thought for a moment before recalling something. Right, Noelle and Panthea managed to kill one outer being. Emmett's eyes turned even hazier as he spoke. It was almost as if he was looking somewhere distant. He was both present and yet not there. What was he seeing? Eventually, his gaze regained some clarity as he began speaking again. Their goal is to trap us here so that we won't touch the source. They want to keep the source to themselves. Or at least, that's how I interpret the situation. I am still not sure, but if there's one thing that I'm sure about, it's that power. Emmett paused, his hand moving towards his lips as he took another slow drag. This time, his hazy eyes trembled for a moment. His hand, too. It's not something anyone would want to talk about. It's contagious, addictive, and it's also the very root of this entire world, and the universe itself. Puff. They have eyes and ears everywhere. They have rooted their influence through every corner of the world, and mere words can arouse their attention. Even now, they are probably watching. Listening. A hazy smile spread across his features as he looked towards the crack. Something pulsed from within, almost as if it was trying to warn him, but his smile grew as he flicked the butt of the cigarette in the direction of the crack. As he did, he looked back at me. Don't worry too much. They might listen, but not if I don't want them to. Emmett's eyes turned completely white for a split moment, a strange power surging from out of his body. The moment I felt the power, my mind paused as I was somewhat familiar with it, and I held my breath. Source. Not even a moment later, something seemed to shift around us. It wasn't noticeable, but I could tell. The gaze of the being behind the crack. It had shifted away from us. What sort of? I may be weaker than the current you, but my connection with the source is far greater than yours. In fact, it's incomparably better. Weaker than me. The thought shook me out of my confusion, but as I tried to ask about it, he began speaking again. Do you happen to know why the mirror dimension was created? His question made me pause. This question, I knew the answer to this question very well, but it seemed to be a rhetorical question as he continued speaking, not giving me a chance to respond. It's a prison, one designed to keep us locked in, never giving us the chance to escape. Even if we do break the shackles of the dimension, our bodies won't be able to handle the real world anymore. It's a well-designed prison designed to make sure that we can never escape. Even though I already knew the truth, hearing it spoken aloud, from my own mouth, made my throat go dry. If I said it's impossible to escape, then there really isn't a way to escape. I was someone who had seen everything. In that regard, when I said that it was impossible to escape, then it was true. That's when the three calamities come into play. Emmett continued, taking out another cigarette and lighting it up. Puff, Ockern, Voracile, and Lethrune. For a moment, the surroundings fluctuated. The crack that appeared in the distance pulsed, and a gaze hovered in our general direction. My heart paused at the sight, a certain sense of dread sweeping down my entire body. The already silent world turned even more silent. Not a noise, not a sound. A suffocating tension lingered across the surroundings as the gaze continued to hover around us. But thankfully, it didn't last long. It soon looked away, the crack pulsing in the air. Puff. With seemingly no care in the world, Emmett leaned back and took a slow drag of the cigarette. Quote. They're the architects of the mirror dimension, and the only ones capable of influencing the world itself. His brows knitted for a moment as he looked at the streets beneath. The source thrives on the existence and faith of all living things. It's the key to everything. Faith. Indeed. Emmett pursed his lips, his pale face turning away from the streets below, and onto me again. Staring at him, I struggled to find the man standing before me to be me. I knew it was me, and yet, it also felt like a completely different person. He didn't look like he belonged at all in this world. The source is the true God. No matter which deity one chooses to worship, all faith ultimately flows back to the source, maintaining the balance. My eyes started to widen. The more conscious and self-aware a being is, the stronger the faith is, sustaining the source's balance. Taking such a life disrupts that harmony, and when such faith is killed, the source weakens. This is especially so if the beings have discovered a way to connect or touch with the source. Killing them would only lead to the weakening of the source. That's why we are imprisoned instead of killed. This is the real truth behind it all. Quote. I stood in silence, quietly absorbing the information. I hadn't really thought about it much in the past, but it all suddenly made sense. The reason why the outer beings trapped the gods instead of killing them, alongside the rest of humanity. It also became clearer why they had allowed humanity to rise again. The source required faith. It wasn't that they were being arrogant or looked down on humans, but rather that eliminating such a race would only mean they would become weaker, as the outer beings were tied to the source. But there was still something that I was curious about. What about the calamities? You haven't really given me a proper explanation. Emmett mentioned something along the lines of, Arcitekas, only ones capable of influencing the world itself, but what exactly did this mean? It means what I said. Puff. Taking a slow and quiet drag, Emmett closed his eyes before exhaling all the smoke in the air. Quote. It's not easy to enter this world. However powerful the outer beings are, entering Earth is not a simple task. The only ones that are capable of achieving such a feat are the three calamities. Taking over the bodies of simple humans, they quietly infect their minds and bodies until they completely take over and create gates where they can step into the world and shatter the dimension from within itself, creating another mirror dimension. Puff. What makes them truly terrifying is that even if you manage to find the calamities, you can't stop them. The moment you kill their host, the outer beings simply move on, claiming another body. And once that happens, finding them again becomes nearly impossible. That's why, rather than fighting them, the goal is to contain them. That's the only thing we can do against them. But it isn't easy. It'll get harder the more they grow up, and their insecurities grow. I'm sure you've just experienced it yourself. Emmett's eyes turned even hazier as he spoke. It gets easier and easier to infect their mind. If you're not prepared, you might find the meter to fill to 100% in the blink of an eye. For a brief moment, his hand stopped mid-motion as he was about to take a drag of the cigarette, his eyes flickered, and his face paled. I knew in an instant that he was most likely experiencing a vision. No, two, ... or maybe more. They were endless, constant, and the reason why I'd gone mad in the end. But this wasn't something that I could stop. Instead, I focused my thoughts and attention on all the things that I'd just heard. A lot was starting to make sense. In particular, Evelyn's situation. Taking into account how the calamity meter had hardly moved in the past, but had gone up by so much with just this incident, it was clear, time was running out. But still, it's a relief. This was the first time I had heard answers without needing to find them myself, after months of searching. But after hearing everything, I wasn't so sure it was a good thing. Single quote ... The only thing we can do is contain them. I thought back to the situation with Evelyn, and my heart sank. By now, it was clear to me. I had used the visions in the future to figure out who the calamities were. Perhaps, through some arrangements, I had orchestrated certain scenarios in order to make sure that I was closer to the calamities and prevent them from awakening. The system quest was something I had arranged for this very specific reason. But this still makes me question the reason why I've been brought all the way here. I had used the third leaf right before Evelyn turned. This was a last-ditch effort that I had used to buy myself more time to figure out the situation. But what now? What was I supposed to do now that Evelyn was about to turn? If it went according to the words I had just heard, the world was practically one step away from complete ruin. I'd also be dead, considering the power that I felt. Something, anything, I needed to think of a way to resolve this mess. There's no need for you to worry too much. A voice echoed once more, snapping me out of my thoughts, as I found Emmett looking at me with the same hazy eyes as before. No, looking better, his eyes were even more hazy than before. They almost looked white. All three calamities must awaken for the next dimension to take form. Each one is essential to the creation of that prison, and... Emmett paused, his brows furrowing in apprehension as he muttered. This time, it'll be a lot different from the past. It'll be a prison none of us will ever be able to escape, even if we try again. He took a deep breath, his trembling hand moving towards his lips as he tried to take a drag of the cigarette in his hand, only stopping once he realized it was finished. That was also the moment he said, quote ... They have learned from their mistakes. Chapter 830, The Three Calamities 3. What do you think is the best way to keep a person from escaping? It was an abrupt question. One that caught me off guard for a moment, but the answer I more or less already knew in my mind. Quote ... It's to make sure they don't have a reason to escape. Yes. A faint smile tugged at his lips as he looked towards the distant crack. What need is there for a prison when the prisoner believes they're free? Give them comfort, routine, even a shallow sense of purpose, and they'll never question it. They'll never seek the truth. And why would they? Quote ... Because they don't believe they are imprisoned. Right. Emmett smiled once more, his hazy eyes turning a little bit clearer. They've learned from their mistakes. They understand what to do in the future, and that's why it's important that you don't fail your mission. I know, he didn't have to remind me. I was well aware of the situation myself. But that still didn't change the fact that I was currently helpless. No, I'm not entirely helpless. There was still the Eye of Oricleus. If I use the eye, then I'm sure I can loop until I figure something out, but that will only delay the inevitable. That's not what I want. I need to get an answer before I am sent back to the future. The third leaf had a time duration. There was no specific reason for it. And as such, I knew that I couldn't afford to waste any more time. Quote ... I know what you're talking about. I said while looking at my past self. Emmett, honestly, it felt both weird and right to refer to him like this. As if he were a completely different entity. I, just felt so distant. I'm at a point where I'm struggling to contain one of the calamities. I'm sure you're aware of the fact that I've used the third leaf to come back to the past. I mainly came back to look for an answer, or something, in order to figure out how to handle the situation, but instead, I found myself here. I'm still lost, and I have no idea how to solve it. Evelyn's situation merely stemmed from her emotional instability. But even though I had used my emotive magic on her, it seemed useless. Or at least, it didn't have a great effect on her. It wasn't enough to curb the darkness that was building up inside her body and consuming her mind. Or at least, this was how I thought of it. But, you already have the answer. Emmett pointed at his temple, his hazy eyes focused on me. Quote. You may think it's not enough, but it is enough. Your emotive magic, that's the end of it all. But I tried. I frowned upon hearing the answer. It didn't work at all. It barely did anything to her. That's because her mind is currently closed off. You won't be able to get through her even if you wanted. Emotive magic is the end to it all, but not the complete answer to your predicament. Then, you'll figure it out soon enough. I'd much rather you feel it than I explain it to you. What? Baffled, I looked at my old self. I felt an immediate wave of something boiling in my chest when I saw the subtle smile on his lips, but soon gave up when I realized that I was no different. No, I am him. I sighed. Was I really this detestable? There's not much time left. Emmett spoke, turning his attention towards the crack in the distance. I should wrap things up before things start to get messy. Placing his hand over his neck, Emmett started to massage it. As he did, he turned his attention towards me for the last time. Remember this, he spoke slowly, making sure that I understood his words. The moment they mark you, it's almost impossible to escape their eyes and control. They can read your thoughts, hear your words and even see your actions. The only way to prevent them from detecting you is by using the source, or... Emmett paused, his eyes blinking slowly. Quote. By embodying and becoming a completely different person. A sudden flashback filtered across my mind. Single quote. I feel like we're being watched. You're not wrong. They can read our thoughts. But only to those they've set their targets on. Learn how to act. Single quote. Immerse yourself in the role. The world is now your theater. They are your spectators. Become someone you are not and hide your thoughts from them. That's the only way to slip past their gaze. But of course, don't lose yourself in that role. Suddenly, several things began to click in my mind. By becoming someone else, you'll be able to hide from their detection and move freely completely. Of course, that will also mean you won't be able to use your powers fully. A lot of your movements will be limited, but this is the price one must pay for freedom. Moving away from the side of the roof, Emmett turned his wrist and checked the time. There's not much time left. I can feel that you'll be brought away soon. Since that's the case, let me give you a little gift. I blinked. Then, something hit me. No, wait, before I could react, he placed his hand against my chest and pushed. The instant he did, the world around me warped, twisting and stretching as though time itself had begun to unravel. Bang! By the time it all stopped, I smashed against something hard. Ook! My mind throbbed, feeling as though I had been rammed by a truck, and when I came to, I found myself in a familiar place. It's the Evanis mansion. There was no doubt about it. Everything about the place exuded refinement, from the meticulously polished garden paths lined with trimmed hedges to the towering mansion that stood at the center. Although a bit different, this was none other than the Evanis mansion I was familiar with. Stand up. A voice followed me a moment later. Looking up, I saw Emmett standing next to me, his gaze murky white as he fixed his attention towards the distance. I followed his gaze, and it was there that my eyes fell on two figures. A young boy and a young girl. Quote. Emmett didn't need to say anything as I activated Lament of Lies and stood up from the spot, following from behind as we moved towards the two children in the distance. He. The soft sound of giggling echoed in the air. I caught you. The two children smiled happily, playing alone in the courtyard as no other adult was present. Standing in silence, I turned my attention towards Emmett. He stared at the scene with indifference. But eventually, he pointed at the young boy. Don't get distracted. Look carefully at him. Frowning, I did as he said, but when I looked at the young boy, nothing seemed out of place. He looked like any ordinary child, carefree and lost in his own little world. Just what? You're not looking. Quote. Question mark quote. When I turned my head, Emmett pointed at his mind, and that was when I finally got an idea as I narrowed my eyes and used the 5th level of emotive magic. The moment I did, my eyes shot wide open. It looks like you're finally seeing it. Emmett's calm voice echoed from beside me as I took a moment to calm myself, focusing on the dark emotions that were slowly building up within the young boy. They weren't very obvious, but it was ever present. But that wasn't the part that shocked me. What did was something else. The more he's exposed to her, the more the darkness within him grows. It won't be long before the darkness consumes him. Quote. Quote. I didn't say anything. What could I even say? I had seen the darkness. Even absorbed that very darkness. If this were true, then she's the source of his darkness. Emmett's words drifted slowly in my ears as he calmly looked at the two. But as he did, he soon turned his head in my direction. But the reason why she's so close to him is because of me. Quote. Quote. I had asked Noelle to keep her close. Quote. Quote. Don't tell me you're feeling bad for the situation, right? Emmett looked at me closely. What you're seeing is something that must be done. Quote. But there are other ways to keep her close. The words flowed out on their own. Yes, there might be. Emmett replied, his gaze unchanging. But this will just change the victim to another. There's no other way around it. The darkness is not something that can be contained. It will corrupt everything and anything that is exposed to it for a very long time. It's not much now, but it won't be long until the changes start to show. Which is why, Emmett suddenly raised his hand, a soft glow enveloping it as his eyes grew even murkier and a thin film spread across the two bodies. In that very moment, the darkness that was spreading out of Evelyn's body focused entirely on Julian. The small child paused for a moment, his expression twisting. Quote. It's best to have the corruption contained within one person. This body is also the most ideal for containment. You may not be aware, but the talent that this body has in emotive aspects is one of the best that exists. It's also the reason why I chose it. Emmett's eyes continued to stare at the little boy, whose face was starting to twitch as the darkness started to take over. He may never be able to tell due to darkness within, but I'm sure you, of all people, are aware. Only someone like him will be able to contain the darkness inside the body. Emmett's voice paused as he lowered his hand. The young boy stopped completely in that moment, his expression darkening as Evelyn turned to look in his direction. Julian, what's going on? Why did you stop? She looked worried as she moved towards him. But just as her small hand was about to reach for him, Julian's expression twisted. Smack. He smacked her hand away, glaring directly at her. Get away from me, Hike, Evelyn shrieked in fright. At that moment, the girl's expression changed as Julian continued to glare at her. At the same time, he raised his hand and was just about to smack her again when he stopped. Quote. Quote. Staring at her in silence, he turned away a moment after. Evelyn stared at his parting back, her eyes starting to water. And soon, Peta, tears started falling down her face. As this happened, Emmett watched all of this coldly. It was also in that moment that I realized what kind of person I had been in the past. My lips pressed together tightly.